Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mr. Walker's Comedy Improv Hour with your host, Mr. What? That's not. Oh, fourth grade. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, guys. This is fourth grade math. I apologize for that. I'm Mr. Walker, and thank you guys for joining me yet again for another awesome fourth grade math lesson. Today, we're going to talk about a new concept called rounding. Okay, you get the idea. So this is something that you might have seen a little bit in third grade, maybe even second grade. We're going to look at it in a couple new ways today, and we're going to see how this also, the use of place value that we've been learning about, how this all kind of goes together and ties together, and it's going to help us to be able to round numbers. Now, if you've never heard the term rounding before, we're actually going to introduce that as a new vocabulary term today, so go ahead and cue the intro. Math vocabulary. So rounding. Let's take a look at what the term round means and what it means to round a number. So basically when we're rounding a number, we're making it a simpler number to work with, but we're still keeping it close to the value that it had. So we're not like just pulling some random number out of the air that we want to work with. We're keeping it close to what it was, but we're making it a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to work with. The way I like to think of it is with shapes. So we know the term round when we're thinking in terms of shape means a shape like a circle, right? It's got nice round, smooth edges with it. It's nice and easy to work with. When you think of a shape like a square, it's more exact, right? It's got those 90-degree angles. It's got those straight sides. It's more exact. So when we round a number, we want to make it look more like a circle. We want to make it smoother and easier to work with, not as exact as a square is, okay? So that's why I kind of trying to make that connection of round between what it means in numbers and what it means in shapes. Kind of the same thing, if you stretch your imagination a bit, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be learning some strategies about how to round numbers and make them a little bit easier to work with. Now, in the past, you've probably heard some sayings like 5 or more, raise the score, or less than 5, let it slide, something like that. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And those are great sayings, and those are ways that we can memorize like the actual mechanics behind rounding to a certain extent. But what we're going to look at today is we're going to kind of conceptualize it a little bit and see like why it actually works that way, why those sayings work, and what are we doing, or what does it mean when we're rounding a number, and how does that relate to place value. So we're going to use a strategy to do that involves using a vertical number line, okay? And we're going to get familiar with what a vertical number line is and how we can use it before we actually use it to round. So when I say vertical number line, what I mean is basically we have our vertical and our horizontal. So we're going to, most of the time we see a number line and it is horizontal, right? It starts at like 0 and goes up to whatever. This time we're going to make our number line vertical, okay? So it's going to go up and down. And we're going to put some numbers on here to help us compare and help us round, okay? But before we get into that, I want you to think about what it means when I say halfway or midpoint. What does that mean to you when you hear that term? I know I'm not going to play our math vocabulary intro again. This is just kind of like a random thought. When you hear the word halfway or midpoint, what does that make you think of? So when I think of the term midpoint or halfway, what I think of is we're right dab in the middle, right? We've come a ways, but we got a little bit more to go. Some real world examples that I could think of, first of all, is like a football field, right? Football field is 100 yards. That 50-yard line, that's midway. That's right in the middle of that football field, okay? Sometimes if you run races or run marathons or something like that, they might have a halfway point to either let you know that you're doing great and you're halfway there, or it's like the turnaround point. So now you got to turn around and come back. Okay, so I want you to think about that term midway or halfway as like the middle, right? We can use that when we're working with a vertical number line by finding that midway point, that halfway point, and then comparing our number, whatever number we're trying to round, to that midway point. So let's start by actually finding some halfway points on a vertical number line. So if I wrote a number line like this, and let's say I had a 10 here at the bottom and a 20 up here at the top, what would be the halfway? What would be in the middle of those two numbers? All right, heard some good thoughts out there, some good discussion, but let's think about this now. We're in between 10 and 20. We want to find that halfway mark. So just visually looking at this, I'm going to say that it's going to fall right about here. But what's that number going to be that's going to be halfway between 10 and 20? Well, if we think of this as a ladder, right, and we're climbing up a ladder, first we'd have to get to 11, and then 12, and then next would be 13, next would be 14, and then this guy in the middle here would more than likely be 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then up to our 20. We know that 15 is going to be our midway or our halfway point, because if we look, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rungs here, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rungs here, okay? Or if we want to count all of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So you get the idea that 15 is going to fall right in the middle. That's our halfway point. Let's get you guys to try one. And draw another vertical number line here. And I'm going to put, this time, I'm going to put 1,000 at the bottom. And I'm going to put 2,000 at the top. Make you guys think a little bit here. Okay, so where's that halfway point going to fall, right? Where's our middle going to be? Take a second, think about that. Talk about it with your learning guide, with your stuffed animal, with your cat, whatever you need to. Think about how could we determine where that midway point, that halfway point is going to be. All right, some of you might have got it out there, and that's fantastic. The way I might like to think about this, though, is we can kind of simplify this, knowing our place value, right? And we could think of 1,000 is the same as 10 hundreds, right? And 2,000 is the same as 20 hundreds. And now all of a sudden, these numbers don't look too intimidating. And if anything, they look kind of familiar to what we already did, right? So I know that my halfway point is going to be 15, okay, because that's what we had over here. But since we're in the thousands, it's actually going to be 1,500. That's going to be our halfway point between those two numbers. You with me so far? Good. Okay, we're going to keep practicing this. Okay, we're going to keep practicing this and see where it takes us. All right, let's try one more example of just finding the halfway point, okay? And then see if we are seeing any patterns or anything here. Okay, so we have another vertical number line here with 3,100, 3,200. So we can start to think about where would that midway point fall again. All right, and we have a pattern here of like some 5s developing. So anytime we're looking between two numbers, for the most part, it's going to involve a 5. So if we look here, I have 3,100, 3,200. So halfway in between that, we know it's going to involve a 5. And if I kind of just look at these numbers right here, I have that 10 and that 20 again, 10 and 20. So here, at least, I know it's going to be 3,150. That's going to be halfway in between, okay? There's 100 span in between the two, and if I were to count up by tens from 100 to 200, so it'd be 3,100, 3,110, 3,120, 3,130, 3,140, and then 3,150 would be my midway point. I could keep going to show that there would be 4 in the middle of that one too. So finding that midway point, finding that spot in the middle is going to be important when we're rounding. So let's take a look at how we can use this to help us round. Okay, and guys, I realize I've been saying midway a lot more than halfway, and you're going to see it written as halfway a lot more. I just got midway stuck on the brain today for whatever reason, but they both basically mean the same thing. We're just looking for that halfway point, that point in the middle of our two numbers, okay? So let's take a look at an example where we're going to use that halfway point to help us round. All right, so our first example, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be rounding the number 4,100 to the nearest thousands place, okay? Okay, so thinking about that number 4,100, I'm going to start by drawing my vertical number line here. And if you could, tell me how many thousands are in the number 4,100. Perfect, there's going to be 4,000 in there. So that's where I'm going to start my low point at. My first spot on here is going to be 4,000, okay? What would one more thousand than 4,000 be? Perfect, 5,000. So my top point is going to be 5,000 because when I'm rounding and making that estimation, as we said earlier, we want it to be close to our original number. We don't want to go too big or too small. We want it to be close, that estimate to be close. So I'm not going to go any farther than this range. I'm going to start at my lowest range of 4,000 because that's how many I have in my greatest place value. And then I'm going to stop with one more thousand than that, okay? And especially because we're rounding to the thousands place, right? Since we're rounding to the thousands place, that's where we're going to look for most of our information at, okay? That number and the one next to it. So 4,000 and 5,000. Where's that halfway point going to be? Well, halfway between 4,000 and 5,000 is going to be 4,500. Again, we got that 5 in there, right? So There's usually going to be a 5 involved in that halfway point somewhere, in whatever numbers that you're dealing with. So now I got the halfway point marked. I got my beginning number, my end number, and I'm rounding to the thousands place. So what I want you guys to do is I'm going to start here at the bottom, and I'm going to start moving my marker up. And when I get to the spot on this number line, this vertical number line, that 4,100 would fall, I want you to tell me to stop, okay? So I'm starting here at the bottom. When I get to this spot where 4,100 should be, tell me to stop. Ready? Here we go. Okay, well, my speaker must not be working too much today because I didn't hear anything come through, but that's okay. I'm guessing most of you told me to stop right around here somewhere, right? Because if we were labeling this vertical number line, 4,100 would be our next spot if we were counting by hundreds, right? And then we would have 4,200, 4,300, 4,400, and then 4,500 would be our midpoint, okay? But we're worried about this one because that's where our number is, 4,100. So knowing this now, visually seeing this on our number line, is 4,100 closer to 4,000 or closer to 5,000? Just visually looking at that, is it closer to 4,000 or 5,000? You're right, it's way closer to the 4,000, right? So if we were going to round 4,100 to the thousands place, we would round it to 4,000 because that's what it's closest to. And we were able to visually represent that on our vertical number line. All right, hopefully this is starting to click to you a little bit. To me, it really helps to see that visual representation so I could say, oh man, it's closer to this guy, or no, it's way closer to this guy. It's getting to that point that can be a little bit trickier. We just want to make sure we do it right, okay? So we're good on that one. Let's take a look at another example real quick. Okay, what if now I wanted to round 4,700 to the nearest thousands place? Where would 4,700 be on that vertical number line? Again, let's see if I can hear you this time. I'll start my marker down here, and as I count up, you tell me when I should stop. Oh, I think I heard you that time. I'm thinking somewhere right in here, right? Does that sound right? Okay. So if I would just keep labeling this, okay? So 4,500, then I would have 4,600, 4,700 would come next, 4,800, 4,900, and then 5,000, okay? So I can see that visually represented there. This is the number that we're worrying about right now, 4,700. So looking at this now, which thousands is it closer to, 5,000 or 4,000? Which one is it closer to? Exactly, it's closer to my 5,000, right? It's only a couple steps away from that 5,000. So 4,700 rounded to the thousands place would give me 5,000. Okay? Why would it not be 4,500? What do you think? Why didn't we round it to 4,500 or 4,500? Sorry, I keep interchanging those. Why did we not round 4,700 to 4,500? I heard a lot of good reasons out there. The reason is because we're not rounding to the hundreds place. We're rounding to the thousands place. So these are our thousands, right? Thousands place. This would only be rounding to 100. We'd only be changing the hundreds place, the 7 and the 5. We want to change to the thousands place. So we're going to go to the closest 1,000, not the closest 100. Okay? Hopefully that's starting to make sense. Let's try out another one together. Okay, so for this example, we're going to round 14,500 to the nearest 1,000 place. Okay, nearest 1,000. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to start with this vertical number line again, and we're going to label our start points and end points so we know what we're dealing with here. So how many thousands are there in the number 14,500? How many thousands are there? You're right, there's 14. So I'm going to start with 14,000. And why am I starting with 14,000? Because we're rounding to the nearest thousand. So we want our numbers to be in thousands on our vertical number line. So we have 14,000 as our starting point. What's 1,000 more than that? Exactly, 1,000 more than that would be 15,000. Put that up there. So I have my start point and my end point. So I need to find my middle point, right? Where are we at in the middle here? Again, just like the other ones, there's going to be a 5 involved here, and halfway in between 14,000 And 15,000 is going to be 14,500. Ding, 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 ding. Holy cow, we're right there already. So what does that mean? If we're right in the middle, that means we're the same distance from this guy and this guy. So what do you think we do? Talk about it with a learning guide or a partner or somebody else in your house. What do you think we're going to do now that the number that we're trying to round is right here in the middle already? What do you think? Well, I heard a lot of good ideas out there. And what we're going to do, and what is the best practice for this, is that we are going to round up. We're going to round up to whatever our closest 1,000 is, or if we're doing hundreds or tens, whatever it is, we're always going to round up. The reason being, we're optimists here, right? If we had a glass of water, excuse my poor drawing here, if I had a glass of water and it was halfway full, we would say it's halfway full, not half empty. We're optimists, right? We're believing in the good stuff here. So we're going to round up. Anytime we're halfway in the middle, we're always going to round up. So 14,500 rounded to the nearest 1,000 is going to be 15,000. All right, you with me so far? Awesome. Let's take a look at another example. All right, let's stick with the numbers that we got going here, since we already got this nice vertical number line drawn. But instead of 14,500, what if I had 14,990? Where would that fall on this number line here? Where could we put that guy? Okay, great. Well, if it helps you to label it and to put your like tick marks in between, that's perfectly fine. But I know it's going to be greater than 500, right? So even if I just went 14,900 would be somewhere in here. So 14,990 would be even snug in there somewhere. So I know that it's going to be closer to what? 15,000 or 14,000? Definitely closer to my 15,000. So 14,990 rounded to the nearest 1,000 is going to give us 15,000 again. Perfect. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, this time we have 14,345. We're still rounding it to the nearest 1,000. So where's it going to fall on the number line, and what's it going to be closer to? Take a second, write the number in on your vertical number line, and then we'll come back and compare it in a second. All right, so if we were going to draw this number on our vertical number line here, this would be, let's see, 14,100, 200, 300. Okay, so this would be 14,300. So 345 would just be a little bit above that, right? But it is less than our halfway point. So that means that we're going to round it down to 14,000. 14,000. Because we're looking at this and it's less than our halfway point. It's closer to this guy here. He's further away from 15, so we're not going to round up. We're going to round down to our 14,000. All right, so hopefully this is starting to make sense. We're going to do another lesson. We're going to practice this, where we're going to practice this a little bit more and use some different numbers and see some different scenarios and how they play out. But for right now, I think you got enough to get going and practice this a little bit on your own. So I hope you enjoyed rounding with me. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.